So before we hit record, we were talking briefly about Jeff Cooper and his books, Principles of Personal Defense and The Art of the Rifle. And then over dinner last night, we were talking about business in general, overall career path, building a brand, building a company. And the range of business books out there that are not worth reading is incredible. There's so many of them. Which ones have you read that were not worth reading?
You Are a Badass at Making Money.
That was not worth reading?
I don't think so. Okay. It was basically just a book to encourage you to make more money. And I felt like it was incredibly redundant and a bit of a waste of time. I've not recommended it to anyone, but I also have not. I feel like I need to read it again to give that piece of advice.
Well, there probably are a lot of books that there have been books that I've read once and then came back to years later and didn't necessarily go, wow, I completely misjudged that book. It was amazing. But I did go, there were actually some insights in here that were worthwhile. Yeah. But that still doesn't make me want to recommend the book because the same way that there's a jillion ways to teach pistol grip, and every instructor either consciously or unconsciously feels the pressure to invent their own vocabulary. How many steps are there in a draw stroke?
4 to me.
4 to you.
4 to me.
Well, if you're a new instructor trying to carve out a niche for yourself, maybe it should 8. Be 3.5. Ooh. Or something like, the number of things where what's old is new again, and we see the same kinds of business ideas and technical ideas and tactical ideas being recycled. We see a lot of things in gear. Like 15 years ago, if you carried a J-frame, you were a FUD. And now it's like, oh, you're a cool kid.
Right.
Carrying a stainless 5-shot hammerless J-frame is bougie. It's not Boogaloo Boy. The Boogaloo Boys aren't super cool anymore. They've been boogalooed out. But the idea that we get this recurring cycle, I haven't quite seen it yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if in a year from now, everyone's carrying Browning high points. Who knows?
Sure.
It could easily come back.
Absolutely.
So we're here in my shop. Sofia's visiting in Indiana, and we spent the evening modifying stuff, working on her competition belt, laser cutting some weird custom Tegris attachments and trying things out. And I always enjoy showing anybody who visits everything we do. I've got the lights off in the back, so that's into Bay 2. That's our fulfillment area. And then around the corner from that is Bay 3, where we do all of our laser cutting, all of our sewing, assembly, and our inventory. And it is so fun to show people who I've known for a while, but they've never been to our shop, have them here and walk them through, because when you see things up close, it's different than talking about them.
Absolutely. Yes. And I have a bit of a reference from another place I visited that shan't be named. And I have a great appreciation for the work you've put into here, organizing everything. I kind of explained it like it scratched an itch I didn't know I had.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Julie in the car today, I'm here with Zindira. We're developing a bag we're really excited about that we're actually going to get to talk about today. And she described it, I hope it's okay for me to share, Julie, that it's like those toys you had when you were younger where the circle and the star and the square all fit into their, the cube fits into the
shape matching.
Exactly. Shape matching. And she was like, it's like that feeling you get when you do that.
Now, there's a famous video along those lines. Have you seen this? That goes in the square hole video.
No.
There's a famous viral video where somebody has a custom made lid on a can with all these different shapes cut, but they are deliberately sized such that any shape that's there, if you turn it the wrong way, you can fit them through the square hole.
Oh.
So a person's like, it's the triangle. What does that go into? That's right. The square hole. The semicircle, you guessed it, the square hole.
That makes you
angry. And the person takes every single individual shape, the arch and the rectangle, and just rotates them wrong. And they all fit through the square hole. So in our shop, we clean every day. We focus on trying to have every employee improve their workstation, whether that's better organization, better labeling, better ergonomics. A lot of our things are on wheels. A lot of the benches are adjustable height, because we want all the different people who work across the shop to be able to make the workspace fit them instead of them having to work at awkward heights or awkward positions to fit it.
Ooh, and that's not an exaggeration. You even had the lights repositioned, the ceiling lights repositioned.
Yes, we have a number of individual ceiling lights that are movable over particular workstations to make sure they're right where the employee in that workstation wants to illuminate what they're working on, which is super nerdy.
I love it.
But we were just working on your competition belt earlier this evening and repositioning things and looking at draw angles and clearances, and even having you take a left knee, take a right knee, and seeing how everything moves around to figure out what we could do to put things closer to where you need them. Everything's a trade-off. There is no perfect solution, but a lot of things are kind of a suboptimal combination. And if we can make them a little better, every time you use that, you get that gain again and again and again and again and again. And it might not win you a match. We're not going to shave minutes off your time, but I really enjoyed the. It's a movie about two famous F1 drivers, a British guy and an Austrian guy, and I'm blanking on the name. Fuel Race, something like that. But they're talking about replacing some aluminum parts on the cars with magnesium to save a little bit of weight. And they do like 2 days of work, and it shaves 2.5 seconds off of lap time. And everyone's minds are completely blown, because in F1 racing, 1.5 seconds to 2 seconds is an eternity. It's like beep. Now I'm out of the holster.
Right.
Versus beep.
Yeah.
And those kind of things, we're not making magical differences, but the difference between buying a bunch of random stuff off the shelf and slapping it onto a belt versus looking at an individual person and where they're carrying, how many pistol mags, how many rifle mags, what their angles are, how their body's shaped, how high or how low they're wearing their belt, and then tuning all that stuff. It's just like having a tailor make a suit for you versus buying off the rack from Macy's. You can get a suit or a dress off the rack at Macy's. It's not going to fit the same way as someone actually taking your measurements and tailoring it for you.
Absolutely. Would you like to show the belt? Should we show the belt? I didn't think to grab it. Is it something?
It's fine. We can leave it out. You can leave it. Show it on socials.
Yeah. Okay.
Tease it.
We'll do some
paywall it. Patreon it.
Okay. Patreon it. I like it. Yeah. Let's do it. Yeah. That'll be $100.
I'm not going to subscribe to that.
I'm joking.
I've already seen it. I've taken pictures of it.
I tried. Okay. No, but it's so amazing.
So
yeah,
that whole question of, we talked a little bit about paywalls and Patreon and business models, and how to figure out how to deliver real value to the people who follow your channel or follow your brand or follow your company.
Right.
I'm a little leery of the monetize everything approach. And anytime a company generates tons of extra kind of low effort content and paywalls it, it always makes me go, I'm actually less interested in everything overall. Yeah. Although I did have a great idea for a channel called Only FNs. Caleb Giddings, take it and run with it. Silkies, Roadicam, 308s, you got it.
Oh yeah. I can't wait to get a text from him. I just know I love it. Text me, Caleb.
But generally, I don't paywall anything. And on our Instagram channel and on LinkedIn and Facebook and our YouTube, we basically show off everything we're doing that's not covered by client NDA. A lot of things we do are covered by client NDA, but usually that only covers the parts we can show. It doesn't cover the processes we can show. And so explaining how we improve things, how we lay them out, how we build our systems, how we do our machining, all those things are fair game to show as long as NDA customer parts aren't in the photo or in the video. And I really enjoy sharing my homework that way because, like you said, it scratches an itch you didn't know you had.
Yes.
And even though you've seen some of our things on Instagram, seeing them in person, like Sofia got to run a CNC machine and I gave you 30 seconds of training. Yes. It was like, explain, load this, apply the magnets, turn on the vacuum, press and release the green button. And she was off and cutting holster shells, because everything else about that process has been so carefully templated by our employees that it's easy. You walk up and it's intuitive. It's very difficult to get wrong.
Right.
That's really fun. Shooting is not that way.
Right.
It's very easy to get wrong.
Yes.
So we talked about how much you want to do more training, both as a student, but also as an instructor. What really excites you about training new students? And do you really want like brand new students? Because with my music background, I know some teachers who are like, I love, 0 to 4 years of experience, like brand new students, teaching them the fundamentals. I know some teachers who are exceptional at that. I actually had a really negative experience in college with a teacher who was a very poor fit for me. She was incredibly good for students in their first 10 years. I think she was a poor fit for students who were at a college or grad student level because the level of technical detail that students at that age and experience level can absorb and assimilate quickly, her overall method for teaching kind of deleted out all those details because it was geared toward younger students.
Absolutely.
But what kind of students do you really want to teach?
I would say the brand new shooter.
The brand new shooter.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So someone who has come in without any habits or hangups that we have to undo.
Okay.
I find that they're anxious in a different way. So people that come in brand new are, of course, nervous to touch the gun for the first time.
Yep.
Take off that first shot. We could do things like apply resistance. I can have them try different stances out. And then, of course, move on to dry fire, onto live fire. Someone who's come in with their husband or their father over the years showing them technique,
yep.
and then having to adjust it then is like mind blowing to them. Whereas starting from a clean slate is, from what I've seen, it's easier to grasp.
Yeah.
It's been my experience.
Bad habits are habits.
Bad habits are habits. Absolutely. And I
feel free to steal that.
Oh, I'm going to. It's already, it's stolen. Yeah. I'm going to trademark it. Anyway, Lena is actually someone who, she's the only instructor I have observed say what she says. And that's that her students should be the ultimate skeptic, that everything she says, she should have to convince them that during the class, they should try out what she says in addition to what they've already learned, and maybe even some conceptions they had on how they should stand. For example, a lot of new students like to stand super erect and like push their hips forward and like, yeah, just like that.
Lean back off the gun.
Right. They feel stable that way and almost just safer that way.
And it's a psychological safety.
Absolutely. So she'll have them try that. And of course, we within safety means like we don't have anyone with their leg up in the air and pinky guns upside down, anything like that. But we do give them resistance at least so they can feel that before they take off that first shot. So that's one of my favorite things. And once I started implementing that with my students, the dots just started connecting.
What does it feel like when you see a student click? How would you describe that feeling?
Empowering.
Okay.
I would say. And
what else?
I know that sounds kind of selfish. It's like, what?
Are you really only doing this for selfish reasons? It's just to scratch your own itch?
It's one of those things. I have this, I don't know, there's altruism, right? I don't know. I believe that no matter what, or no matter how altruistic something is, there's always some intrinsic gain. As much as, we want to think that we're always doing something for someone else, it always makes us feel a certain way that we chase, you know what I mean? So absolutely, I get a lot out of it. And I also just remember how terrified I was to shoot the first time. I wore gloves. I was like, this thing is going to burn my hands. I was sure of it. Mm-hmm. And seeing someone get on the other side of that fear is incredibly empowering, I would say.
Yeah.
You said what else though?
Well, is it one dimensional? Is it like, this is the one thing I feel when I see a student get it?
No. It also feels, I don't really have a feeling to attach to it. I will say that once we get over that hump, once the student makes that connection, I know there's just this list of things we get to go over next.
Yep.
How to make that just even better.
Their world just opened up.
Absolutely. So once it's like a barrier's been broken, and I'm excited for them because it's really time to start learning, I would say.
Is there a little bit of like almost like a parent to child pride and you're doing so good. Like I see what you're accomplishing. When we bring in new employees and onboard them here and are trying to show them how we do all the manufacturing lean stuff that we do, we have often had moments where a person who, especially if they came from a manufacturing background that limited their autonomy and prevented them from making changes and improvements, really showing them that we want them to create better ways of doing things, and then recognizing them publicly when they do in front of the entire rest of the staff in one of our morning meetings and saying, so-and-so made a great improvement at the sewing station yesterday. Here's a quick video, 30 seconds, explaining what they changed and why it's better. That it is like rolling a snowball downhill, because the flip side, the completely dark inverse of that is taking a brand new shooter to the range, handing them a 454 Casull or a 500 Smith & Wesson Magnum revolver, and watching them just get beaten by the recoil on that first shot, and then realizing they're never going to want to do this again.
Right.
And it might make a lulz video that gets millions of views, but that person you've closed off that world to them.
Absolutely. What's been your favorite adjustment made by an employee here?
Oh man, probably my favorite on our main production CNCs for holster shells. We have in each machine a simple air gun suspended on a 5-foot loop of 1/8-inch shock cord. This stuff is like 6 cents a foot. It's super cheap. But we were always taking an air gun and hanging it on a hook outside the machine enclosure. And then when the cycle would finish, picking it up, reaching into the machine, blowing chips off the part. And then always, because you're looking at the work, you end up fumbling the air nozzle and dropping it on the floor and having to stop, step back, bend down, pick it up, hang it back up. And one of my employees said, can we just suspend this on a bungee inside the machine so that when I need to reach for it, it's right where I need it to be? And I said, of course we can do that.
Right.
Of course we can do that.
Yeah.
And like 50 or 60 cents worth of shock cord, one overhand knot and a couple of zip ties later, the employees never have to reach in and out of the machine. And when we're running production, they would have to do that hundreds of times a day. And we just took it and put it right where they needed. And the two employees at that time who were running those machines most, when we made that change, they couldn't stop smiling. And all of us felt dumb. Everybody was excited. Everybody felt like an idiot because it felt so obvious. It was cheap. It was fast. It was right there in front of us. We didn't have to order anything. We just had to go grab a few feet of shock cord and tie a knot and hang it up in the machine, and it was done.
Right.
That one, really loved that one.
Absolutely. Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, you showed us a few walking through here that
there's nerdery everywhere.
Oh, everywhere. We love it. You even have a 3D printed holsters, I'm going to call it a holster, for your Sharpies.
Yes, we have 3D printed holders for our Sharpies. We have some that are magnetic and they stick to the machine enclosures. We have some that are screw mounted and they're on the various workbenches and walls. I kind of jokingly, but very seriously, like in my car, I have Kaizen foam for my water bottle, coffee, and my breakfast that I bring in the morning to the shop.
Right.
And that keeps me from forgetting my coffee, because if I show up to the shop and I forgot my coffee,
not a great day.
That's a real loss.
Yeah,
that's bad.
I relate to that.
And
absolutely. Do you not have a coffee maker here?
We do.
I'll say, if you don't have a
you've got any machine shop, any manufacturing shop needs to have a coffee maker. We've actually discussed getting an espresso machine.
Yeah.
And what I haven't figured out yet is if the productivity gains from the caffeine would offset the productivity losses from the time spent making espresso.
Ooh, but Nespressos make a coffee in 45 seconds. You have to refill the water. And I'm advocating for your employees here.
Yeah. Well, we'll consider it.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah. I'm so glad I could help. I would love to pivot a little bit and talk about the holster that you put together for the fanny pack. And just to give context to the listeners, is that a holster that you were already workshopping, or is that something that came up during our... That
was a modified version of an existing holster. So the off-body carry is bad and nobody should ever do it is a thing that some people say, and it's not actually accurate. Off-body carry is not bad necessarily. Many applications of off-body carry are bad, but not all. And it can be a perfectly valid method of carry. And in some contexts, it may be the only valid method of carry. And so rather than saying, this is terrible and nobody should ever do it, what we want to do is look at the context in which it is appropriate contextually, make it as effective as possible, minimize the downsides that are inherent to that method, and then make it easily accessible to any customer who wants to use it. All those things being said, there's a lot of bag carry solutions on the market, and at best, most of them are half-baked. Some are not baked at all.
Absolutely.
And by not baked at all, I mean an elastic sock with a gun shoved in it, stuffed inside a bag that doesn't have any structure or reinforcement, and without any training or guidance to the student about how to safely manage that firearm when it's off body. Do you ever set it down? Where do you leave it? How do you lock it up? How do you access it? Should you put your chapstick and your keys and a spare pair of socks and everything else in the same pocket as the gun? All those various factors are in play, and that's all under the umbrella. That's all off-body carry, but there's a really big difference between a well-designed holster with a secure attachment method in a dedicated pocket in a purpose-built bag and somebody dropping a J-frame with no trigger guard in their gym bag.
Absolutely.
And those two extremes are really extreme from each other. And talking to Julie and Sofia about this idea of developing a new holster and a Velcro attachment system for their bag application, I really wanted to find ways to make it ambidextrous, able to be given to the customer fully assembled, so it's not a kit that they have to put together, and easily repositionable inside a bag that has appropriate hook and loop panels sewn in to integrate with. So you want to show it to them? Absolutely.
And to give further context, by the time this comes out, we will have announced it, I'm pretty sure. Maybe. Looking at the boss lady over here. Are you in search of top-notch gear that exceeds your expectations? Look no further than GPS, brought to you by Go Outdoors Incorporated. GPS has been dedicated to crafting the finest products for hunting and shooting since 2002. As someone who frequents the gun range, my GPS bag is a staple to safely and effectively haul my gear. My personal favorite is the GPS Tall Range Backpack, which makes walking USPSA stages simple and organized. Their specialized bags are designed to keep all of my valuable equipment secure and organized. With GPS, you can experience the ultimate peace of mind. There are 3 exciting product lines: GPS Tactical, GPS Wild About Hunting, and GPS Wild About Shooting provide the perfect solution for your specific needs. So whether you're on a hunting expedition or hitting the range, GPS is your reliable companion. To find a bag that fits your needs, use code SHESHIELD20, that's SHESHIELD 20, to save and to support the pod. Again, that's SHESHIELD20 at checkout.
We're getting a nod and a wave, and
we can cut this out if we need to. So, for further context, Julie
see our product announcements.
Julie is someone that I have a lot of respect for in the industry. She's the owner of Zindira, and we are going to have a full-blown multi-part episode on her story, how she has gone to develop the bag she already has in place, and how we started this conversation around a fanny pack. And I guess we're just kind of calling it a fanny pack, even though, how do you feel about the phrase or title fanny pack? We talked about that the other day.
Well, I thought it was funny that you just called it a fanny.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I call things bags.
Okay. Gotcha. But you knew exactly what I was talking about.
Well, I know what you mean. I'm a dad. I'm in my 40s.
Right.
Fanny pack is my jam. I'm in my fanny pack era.
We're sending you one when our final one is coming your way. So
I already own several Lululemon bags.
Okay, this one is going to be way different.
No, I believe that, but they're great for snacks.
Yeah, they're great for snacks. Yeah, absolutely. So, something I particularly love, I'm just going to brag on Julie, is that she has become such an informed producer of these bags. So she's taken multiple off-body carry courses. She has gone to really challenge herself in this space so that she can better supply those who do not have a good option in the industry. Like Andrew mentioned, there are so many bad options out there. And I wanted a bag that was slightly more compact, fits my black leather rugged style just a little bit more. We just kind of looked at each other one day and we just decided we're going to go for it. And she's, she has a incredible backing behind her. She has a great relationship with the factory in Mexico. It's family owned, and Julie is there working with them constantly. High quality leather, just so many amazing parts coming together into this creation. And I remember I just wanted to learn more about, I don't know how this came up, hybrid holsters. I texted you one day. Oh yeah, I was doing a YouTube review of the fanny pack options out there right now, because I am a fan of the Vertex fanny pack. Take it away. Go for it.
No, you sent me a message and said, hey, I have some questions about hybrid holsters. And I said, have a seat.
Yeah, you FaceTimed me.
And I said, I have a lot of experience with this. I started making hybrid holsters in 2008. There are a lot of differences in design, and some that are excellent, some that are so-so, and some that are absolute garbage. And hybrid holsters have lots of people who love them, mostly for comfort reasons, and lots of people who hate them, mostly for performance and safety reasons. And to say, are hybrid holsters good or bad is such a broad question, because there are so many different actual executions of hybrid holsters in that category. Hybrid holster just means you have multi-materials in the design. So that could be a kydex shell on a neoprene backer, or a kydex shell on an injection molded backer, or a kydex shell on a leather backer, or it could be a leather holster with kydex reinforcement or metal reinforcement. There's lots of things that qualify as a hybrid holster. And I think you weren't expecting me to like walk over and wrench open the fire hydrant and be like, here's 10 years of holster history. Blah.
Right. And this first came up because do you think we should mention brands? I never know if I should do that or not.
Do you like getting sued? I love it.
Oh, okay. Cool. So there's a brand that I was testing out actually quite a few methods for running.
Okay.
And the same holster that I was using in one of their running belly bands, I was using in my Vertex fanny pack. I don't mind saying Vertex because I do really like their EDC fanny pack in collaboration with Lena Mitchell. Anyway, moving on. Shameless plug there. So I transferred it to the fanny pack. I'd go back and forth. And then, I don't know, one day I started realizing that the retention of my firearm in the holster was
suboptimal.
Absolutely. And I remember thinking back to a time that I wrote this particular company about a completely separate holster. So I've so far had like 4 of their holster setups, and some of them in combination with other, like a band with a holster, clips into a band with a holster. Moving on. I reached out to them and said, hey, this retention is not working out for me. And there were no screws that I could adjust on this particular setup. And they told me to heat it up with a hairdryer.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, duh. Okay, cool. So like I went and literally in my kitchen, heated up this kydex, pushed on it, messed with it for maybe close to 30 minutes. I even made a video. I posted it being like, hey guys, you could heat up your kydex. What is the issue?
That has been that company's customer service recommendation for retention adjustments for 15 years.
Why might that be not so optimal?
So it's fine if you know exactly what you're doing.
I don't.
And that's why it's not fine as a general purpose customer service recommendation.
Right.
So back in the day, when I started making hybrid holsters, there were a number of companies making hybrid holsters and many more that came after that. And the basic approach was make a kydex shell and use what we would call pop rivets or close-headed rivets to pin the kydex shell to a flat leather backer. And at that point, the idea was the thicker and stiffer the leather, the better. And there were various sort of branding, positioning things around, cowhide, steer hide, horse hide. Some dude had elephant hide, and it was like, whoa, that's like super extra.
Wow.
Like ostrich hide, like who knows what, parakeet hide. Nobody knows. There were all these different hides. And the general approach was thicker, stiffer was better, because leather is a natural material. It degrades over time. It softens over time. It softens in response to exposure to heat, to oils, to body moisture. When you wear it against your body, leather naturally over time breaks down. The rate at which it starts to break down and soften up is dependent on how it's treated, whether it's vegetable tanned, chrome tanned, how thick it is, how it's sealed, how much you're sweating on it. Florida man wrecks holsters super fast.
Absolutely.
Aliens who have acid for blood, like Caleb Giddings, who rusts every stainless steel gun that we put in the same room as him. It just turns into powder.
We love Caleb, to be clear.
Hey, Caleb. Those things are very person dependent, but the fundamental difference between an engineered material like kydex or Boltaron and leather is the kydex or Boltaron won't as rapidly break down and change in its mechanical properties. The kydex will remain stiffer for most of its life. Kydex holsters do wear out. Any kydex holster, if you train with it regularly, you will wear the holster. If you carry with it daily, you will wear the holster, and any good, reputable holster company will warranty their stuff for anything that wears or fails under normal use. For years and years, I always told customers, and still do, I am really happy anytime a customer emails us and says, hey, I wore my holster out training and dry firing and shooting. Like, it is like, there's no tread left on this holster. The tire is bald. We send them a brand new current production holster, fully assembled with new attachments, everything, not just a shell, the whole thing immediately, because we are so happy to see clients actually taking it out and putting it on the road. It doesn't make me happy to know that a client took one of our holsters, put their gun in it, and then put that in a safe for 5 years.
Right.
They're meant to be used. They're meant to be worn out. And I will happily, and I've had some customers who have broken, hey, every year I wear out a holster because I take 5 to 6 major training classes a year and I dry fire a ton and I'm just a high mileage driver. I put a lot of wear on these holsters. I have some customers who we've sent holster after holster after holster to, and I'm happy to do it because they are really putting in the work, and that's the point.
Absolutely.
But hybrid holsters, they do break down. The leather softens up, and one of the main issues, if you just rivet the shell to the leather, you cannot control the offset between the kydex and the leather. A number of companies responded to that by, instead of using pop rivets, using a screw post and a screw with a rubber spacer. And then you can tighten the screw, compress the rubber spacer, and suck the kydex shell in closer to the leather and get more retention. The downside of that is the more you compress that cavity, the more you drive the gun into the leather, and then you accelerate the rate at which the leather wears out. Mm. It's just like screws.
Right.
Screws. All screws, generally. Whatever they're being driven into, whatever kind of screw they are, there are torque specs for screws. And it isn't the case that tightening it more is always better. Anybody who's ever over-tightened a screw and stripped out what they were driving it into knows that it gets more and more secure, and then it just falls off a cliff and it doesn't work anymore. And so what we saw with adjustable retention hybrid holsters was, in a lot of cases, clients were trying to achieve a level of retention that combination of materials simply couldn't reliably produce. And in chasing that, they wanted a really firm retention. In chasing that, by over-tightening and over-tightening and over-tightening, all they did was accelerate the wear cycle and cause the leather to degrade faster. They never got that peak retention they wanted. They did get a worn-out leather backer way sooner than they would have if they had lived with a lower level of retention. But then again, all these designs are dependent on the particular details of that manufacturer. And there are good hybrid holsters, okay hybrid holsters, and garbage hybrid holsters.
Since we haven't said the name, the one that I was telling you about,
Crosscreed.
Right. No, it took me so long to realize. Where would you on the scale of where would you put that?
I would say Crossbreed is the Kleenex of kydex hybrid holsters, in that they have become like ping pong. They've become the brand name that was known for popularizing and sticking with hybrid holsters. I had my first discussion with Mark Craighead, who was at the time the founder and CEO of Crossbreed, who has since passed away. I had my first conversation with Mark about hybrid holsters around 2010. And at the time, I was developing and launching my own design, which was distinctly different from Mark's design. But Crossbreed was at the time highly publicizing that they had a patent on hybrid holsters. And being a young startup entrepreneur, not really knowing my way around the patent system, I didn't have a good handle on even how to look that up. And so I simply contacted them in good faith. I emailed Mark directly and said, hey, I'm a small holster shop in Indiana, and I'm working on my own hybrid holster design. I don't want to violate your patent. Can you tell me what features of your holster are patented so I can make sure that my design doesn't trespass on those? And his response basically was, well, tell me everything about your holster and I'll let you know if it violates my patent. And that is a completely understandable response from a CEO of a company who's in a leading position in a market space. And it's also just a super crappy way to handle things. And I have no beef with Mark. And I am glad that Crossbreed is carried on. I think they do serve a valuable niche in the market. A lot of their customers love them. I'm sure there are great people working there. And it was incredibly unfortunate. Mark's untimely passing was a tragedy for that whole family and their wider work family. So I have tons of sympathy and love for them. But of course, I'm not going to send over all the details of the design that I'm carefully working on without knowing exactly what his patent includes. And so I just kind of didn't answer that email.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can.
And now, being closer to Mark's position now than I was to my position then, when people contact me to ask questions about holsters, as a company, generally, we don't patent things. And actually, over dinner, I was talking with Julie about this. And the reason that we don't patent most things is not because I don't believe IP is valuable, but because in the industry and the product categories we're in, the iterative life cycle of major product families is so short that it's less time than the average patent application cycle. And so I have no interest in spending thousands of dollars and a bunch of my time to patent a thing that 24 to 36 months from now, when the patent finally issues, assuming we get it through on the first shot, we've already obsoleted that product and moved on to a next generation of the design that contains features the patent doesn't cover. There is no point in me patenting yesterday's news. And so one of the things I said to you tonight as we were working on some stuff with your comp belt is speed is a superpower. The ability to bring new designs to market, to iterate them nearly instantly, and then absorb and rapidly assimilate client feedback and make improvements. This is one of the beauties of lean manufacturing. If I had 100,000 units in inventory and then a client brought me the most brilliant idea, a 1 in a million idea that improved our design and our product in an unbelievable way, I would then have 100,000 dead units on the shelf that I would either have to sell in bad faith, discount into oblivion, or throw away and eat the cost of. All of those options are bad. And so we want to be able to prototype quickly and cheaply, iterate instantly, and then have constant feelers out for good feedback, because not all customers give good feedback. Some give static.
Right.
You ever experienced that?
Oh, no, I've never created a product and then Is that what you're asking?
Have you ever seen people give feedback or give commentary about products, and you look at their commentary and go, that person doesn't know what they're talking about?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. This is so random, but a friend and I were super bored one night. We may have had a few drinks, and we were just reading through Amazon reviews for fun on like really weird products.
Hanging out with the bots?
Totally. And mostly we found this I'm going to hate myself later for going on this tangent during such
You can cut it.
I don't know if I will though. I think
okay, go for it. Lean in.
It was a painting of Jesus, and the reviews were just ridiculous. It was like, this is what my Jesus Christ looks like. So 5 out of 5 stars. Anyway, that's the first thing I thought of when you asked me that question. But no, I have not delved much into that topic myself.
Well, you don't need to be an inventor or creator of a product. If you purchase off Amazon and you've read reviews and you know how to tell which ones are the bots and which ones are not,
right,
you will immediately understand that some people understand how to use a product, they use it appropriately, and they give relevant contextual feedback. Some people do not understand a product, they do not use it appropriately, and they give completely ungrounded, useless feedback. It's like, this champagne flute didn't work at all when I tried to use it to assemble IKEA furniture. And you're like, well,
yeah,
unsurprising.
Right. Absolutely. Yes. So I would love to know, you explained something in that conversation that I would love to hear you explain, because you articulate things in a way that I can't at this point. When it comes to the structural integrity of a hybrid holster compared to a fully kydex holster, during the motion of a gun going in and out of it, would you give that story?
Just for context, this is the holster that we've been working on. It is a very simple ambidextrous mid.
Sorry. Sorry.
No, it's fine.
So late.
Some words just don't work.
It's what? It's
ambidextrous.
It's 9:40 p.m.
Ambidextrous. It's an ambidextrous holster. Mid sweat guard, full kydex. It is fixed for tension, so it has 2 eyelets, and in this case, it has a laser cut Tegris placard on the back that has hook Velcro sewn to it. But when you put a holster, we put a firearm into a holster that's a symmetrical kydex shell, the holster actually flexes open as the trigger guard of the firearm passes through what normally is a dimple or an overpress area in the trigger guard. And you pass through that, you have what we call an interference fit. The holster has to flex open, and then when the trigger guard gets past that interference point, the holster snaps back into position. And that is the kydex holster click that people talk about. It is that temporary displacement of the kydex holster shell followed by it snapping back into position once the gun is fully seated. On a hybrid holster, you have a rigid kydex shell on one side and a flexible leather backer or a flexible neoprene backer, whatever, some other material on the other side. And so instead of displacing or deflecting the kydex, typically what happens is you distort and bend the flexible backer. So the gun has a little bit more of a mushy seating into fully seated. It doesn't have the same click typically, and over iterative draw cycles, as that more flexible material wears, it wears out faster. The kydex or bolt around remains the same, and what you eventually get is what we call a gun bucket. It is a gun-shaped gravity pocket where as long as you drop the gun into it, the gun stays in place. But if you tip it upside down, the gun falls out.
And not even a vigorous shake test.
The vigorous shake test is internet garbage.
Will you explain that? Actually,
okay, so we talked about the French waiter trick where you snap a tablecloth out from under the wine glasses and the soup bowl and the forks and knives, all the various forks, the salad fork, the dessert fork, all the forks. That has a lot to do with pace. If you slowly drag the tablecloth, everything falls over. You have to inertia snap the tablecloth out of position. The same way in a draw stroke, we want to snatch the gun out rather than slowly dragging it out. If you take a holster, even an appropriately molded full kydex shell, and you put a fully weighted loaded gun in it and you inertia snap it, the gun will fly out. It has a ton of mass relative to its size. Guns are dense and heavy objects for their size. When you wear a firearm, especially if you're carrying inside the waistband, OWB is a separate thing.
Right.
But if you're wearing it inside the waistband, you have the compression of your belt and clothing acting on the holster and limiting how much it can be displaced open when you holster and unholster. And so the appropriate way to test the retention on an inside the waistband holster is as worn on the body, period. So with an unloaded firearm in your normal orientation, standing or sitting, with the typical pants, belt, whatever you wear, holstering up and going, is this level of retention here sufficient to retain the firearm? If you really want to pressure test that and like go to Chuck E. Cheese and jump around in the ball pit with an unloaded firearm and nobody else present, maybe you own a Chuck E. Cheese. I don't know.
Not yet.
But if you want to go do a little bit of parkour with an unloaded firearm, feel free, but understand that nobody builds concealment holsters that are designed to withstand bungee jumping. And nobody is getting picked up by the Hulk, held upside down like Loki, and shake it.
Right.
Firearms aren't designed to stay in holsters under those circumstances. They're designed to stay in holsters under normal carry circumstances. And so the shake test, where people on YouTube put a gun in and go, is a fundamentally unserious test of retention because it leaves out factors that increase the retention as worn on the body.
Thank you for explaining
that. That was super long.
No, I'm so glad you explained that. I think it feels long because you've explained it to us a few times. Because I even think
it feels long because I've explained it to thousands of people.
Oh, that's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you got it down though.
It's in my FAQ.
It's realistically two minutes of an explanation, but seriously, thank you for explaining that. So I would love to hear about the material you used for this, as well as the cuts you've made. And I know this isn't even the final holster, because today Julie and I went to the range with the bag. We did quite a bit of dry fire and live fire, drawing under some pressure. And we even found a new development today, and that's that the gun was canting out slightly. And I was actually getting my hand stuck on the inside of the holster when drawing from the bag. So I'd love to know if you'd share that.
So we do a lot of laser cutting and sewing here in the shop. One of the primary materials we use is Tegris. It's made by Milliken. It's a woven polypropylene plastic. So it's 100% plastic. It has kind of a carbon fibery look, but it's not carbon fiber. It's plastic. And like Kydex and Boltaron, I usually use the analogy of Coke versus Pepsi. Kydex and Boltaron are PVC hybrid acrylic thermoplastics. They are very similar in a lot of ways, slight difference in flavor. In these kinds of woven materials, Milliken Tegris and Propex Curve are two similar but slightly differently flavored materials that have the same basic construction method. They are laser cuttable. Kydex and Boltaron are not, in most cases, laser cuttable, because when you laser cut PVCs, anything with vinyl in it, you actually create aerosol hydrogen chloride gas, like chlorine gas, like World War I trench warfare chlorine gas. And most companies that manufacture laser cutting equipment, if they find out you've been cutting PVC or vinyl in their machines, they cancel your warranty. They are done with you because it's highly corrosive stuff. But polypropylene lasers beautifully. And we laser cut our link system, our belt bite 2.0 and 2.5 for the Helios, and all the Enigma face plates and various belt-in attachments for Filster. Tegris is a fantastic material for laser cutting. In this case, we wanted a hook Velcro lined removable placard that could bolt onto either side of an ambidextrous holster for right or left hand orientation in a bag. This was one of the early prototypes. It has a single cutout here for grip clearance because the constraints on a holster mounted in a bag are different than on a belt. You don't need to have clips. You don't need a mod wing. Mod wings and clips really only matter if you have a belt in play. If you don't have a belt in play and you don't have that compressive ring drawing everything in towards your body to improve concealment, you don't need all that extra hardware. And so this holster doesn't have a mod wing, doesn't have any mounting points for belt clips, but we did want to make the holster fully symmetrical. So it has, in this prototype phase, a grid pattern that allows us to move the Velcro placard up or down in relation to the holster shell to change the depth at which the holster rides in the bag pocket in relation to the sewn-in Velcro that's in the bag. Because you can't always put Velcro everywhere in the bag pocket, but as much as possible, we want to be able to position the holster shell optimally for access to the grip. We don't want to open the bag up and have the holster at an awkward angle where the grip's not accessible, or at an awkward depth, either too high or too low, any place that's not optimal for achieving a full firing grip and drawing the firearm. We also don't want the orientation to be such that it's difficult to draw the firearm without flagging your own body. It is, Matt Graham, he famously joked, he's like, yeah, I got hit in a gunfight. It's like, yeah, dude, you shot yourself in the leg. Hits on yourself don't count.
Right.
We do not want to design a concealment and carry system that increases or requires, if it requires, it's a total fail. We don't want a system that increases the chance the customer will end up flagging any part of their body with a loaded firearm while they're drawing it. And so being able to control the angle and the ride height in the pocket is super important. And for that reason, this placard is largely circular. If we had made it rectangular, we could potentially achieve more Velcro to Velcro engagement between the holster and the bag in certain orientations. But if you needed to change the angle, you might have to mess with all the hardware and change how the holster mounts to the placard and that placard mounts to the bag. By making the placard circular, any orientation of angle is equal in terms of how it lines up with the walls of the pocket in the bag. And so you can play with that angle as much as you want, and you don't actually have to loosen, disassemble, or reposition any of the hardware. You just line it up, put it where you want it, hug the whole thing together, make all the Velcro lock up, and you're ready to go.
Mic drop. But don't drop these mics. They look super expensive.
This one's cheap. That one's more expensive.
Drop it. Just kidding. Yeah, I'm so excited for this. Once I went running with that particular hybrid holster, and then realized it was the same one that I was putting in my fanny pack. And between those two forms of carry, I would say for a good 2 months, I carried those two things together 70% of the time.
Yeah.
My Enigma was, of course, the other 30%. So once I found out that was a problem, and you blew my mind with that FaceTime call, I immediately felt like there's this huge hole in the industry. And seeing how both you and Julie, just from these conversations, have created already products that have answered so many questions, I'm so impressed, and I feel so honored to be part of it. I can't even describe it.
Well, I really appreciate you introducing me to Julie. And one of the things that we look for as a manufacturer when we're evaluating potential partners for product development is there are customers who put in the work and there are customers who don't put in work. And the difference between a customer who puts in the work, who trains, who shoots, who carries regularly, who is an actual practitioner within the field in which they intend to create products and sell, the difference between that and a dilettante who invents a thing out of thin air, the single worst story that we see over and over and over again in holster space is, I looked around for 5 seconds and I couldn't find a holster that was exactly the way I wanted, so I decided to start a company. That is insane. We've seen that so many times. And what invariably happens is that person who is like, I couldn't be bothered to Google. I just like I didn't immediately have spoon fed to me exactly the thing I wanted. So I decided to invent a thing, especially if that person has not taken any force on force classes, any combatives classes, any kind of time or performance based live fire classes. They invent terribly dysfunctional things. They invent designs, they reinvent designs that have been invented and then completely ruled out by the mainstream within that industry a decade or more ago. We see the same bad ideas and the same low effort mid implementations of things over and over. It's like a treadmill. Like we just see the same things over and over and over, almost always being reinvented by people who couldn't be bothered to do any of the work to understand that product space. And that can sound like incredibly snooty gatekeeping. At the same time, it's all out there. Like you can YouTube and Google an unbelievable amount of information about holster making. And if you can't be bothered to do a little bit of work, nobody should take your product seriously, because the chance that you had, okay, here's a deep cut.
Ooh.
I've just had an idea.
Okay.
Lightning has just struck my brain. Name the movie.
I don't know it.
Dustin Hoffman, Hook, with Robin Williams. Oh, lightning has just struck my brain, and someone's like, well, that must have hurt. Smee says, I have had an idea. Lightning has just struck my brain. And Captain Hook says, that must have hurt. But that idea that people think they've invented something phenomenal, and what they've found is the same fool's gold that hundreds of people before them have found. And then when they've tested it, they're like, you know what? Actually not. Doesn't work. And the single characteristic that to me defines companies in the carry and concealment space that have integrity versus those that don't is when they drop a product as soon as they realize it's not adequate. If a company, a founder, even if it's like a business of one, single person has a product design, if they go to a force on force class or a combatives test and they try it out and it fails, their response is either, okay, that's done, back to the drawing board, that was not adequate and I'm not selling it, I'm not giving it away, it's not a thing. Or their response is, well, that was a fluke, like that doesn't count. It's still fine in most cases for most people. And it's like, well, is it though?
Right.
If you've proved that it fails, it will fail again. And if you're comfortable selling a thing you know fails to customers for whom it must not fail when they need it, you should feel bad about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's not do that.
Let's not do that.
Let's not do that.
This is the solution. Yeah, absolutely.
Now, every product in this space will fail under certain conditions. I have never, ever seen a holster, duty holster, concealment holster, appendix holster, strong side holster, inside, outside, right or left-handed, active retention level 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, that will not fail under certain circumstances. None of these things are absolute. Nothing is fully bulletproof. But there is a very, very big difference between known design flaws and known failure modes and designs that are robustly tested and iterated repeatedly to keep them as bulletproof as possible.
Right.
So On the topic of off-body carry, I am really excited to be working with practitioners because there's so much low effort junk in that space. And one way of looking at it is like, oh, well, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. If all these products are junk and this is slightly better than junk, it's awesome. And nobody gets excited about that. You don't want to make slightly better than junk. I don't want to make slightly better than junk. And Julie doesn't want to make slightly better than junk. We want to make a product in this category that is clearly head and shoulders above all the other stuff in that category. Absolutely. Where anybody who picks it up, who has experimented with any kind of off-body carry before, goes, oh, this has been clearly really well thought out.
Absolutely.
And the difference there, you can't really tell from a web page or even necessarily from a YouTube review, but I have often picked up holsters from other companies, and within the first 5 seconds, the person who made this never carried this. Because if they had, they would have changed it because it obviously doesn't work.
Right.
And we're in the business of actually selling solutions, not talismans.
Absolutely.
Although we could, you could have a company that
could do that.
Sold like whoopee blankets.
Sure. I like it.
Fleecy.
Sure.
Weighted blankets.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what we're selling.
Right.
Although nothing against weighted blankets.
Of course
great.
not. Of course not.
And so it's been exciting to me to have real feedback from you two as you've tested out the things we've made and go, this is what we like. This is what we don't. This is what works for us. This is what doesn't. And talking about all the details of buckles and strap type and width of things and where the attachment points should be and which shoulder you route it over and whether you have to tear it, whether you stabilize it high or low, whether you plunge into it, all those different things. Like, this is doctoral level product design because it's being designed by practitioners. That's really exciting to me. It is easy to make a thing that can work on a sunny day. It is very hard to make a thing that works in a clinch.
Absolutely.
And that's what I want to make.
Yes. And it was kind of funny today at the range. We fell into a few issues. At least we discovered a few of the things we thought were going to work didn't work. And I would look over at Julie and be like, this didn't work. She'd be like, yeah, okay, that's good. Like, let's film it. Let's take it back to Andrew tonight and let's talk about it. And that was the most exciting thing I've ever done in this industry. I'm going to be honest, like that just right there. That was a moment where it was one of those like click moments of, I'm so glad I quit med school to be here. So all that to say.
Are your student loans paid off?
Yeah, actually I have no student loans.
Huge props.
Thank you to my parents, moving on. But yeah, so even my master's degree, isn't that insane?
I saved up and saved up and saved up, and I emptied my savings account to pay off the last of my student loans in January of 2020.
Oh, wow.
And the next month I was like, I really wish I had money in my savings account. It was like, yay! Oh no!
Oh God! Yeah, wow! What
we made it.
Timing.
We made it through, but man,
yeah,
that music degree, those music degrees,
yeah,
the ROI on those is not great.
Yeah, absolutely. My sister's getting her triple doctorate right now in music, so yeah, yes,
world's smallest violin,
and you can say that.
I can.
He's a violinist, y'all. So, and a violist.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. Well, okay. So yeah, the deviation that my life took is all coming together with this project. So it's been incredible. And something I'd like to mention is we plan to decrease user error by creating an educational series surrounding this product. So not only showing you all how this was created with just filming our experience here with Andrew, but actually giving you the coursework on what to do when you're not wearing your bag with a loaded firearm, especially when you're at home with your little ones.
Do not leave it on the bus, please.
Yeah, don't do that either. Maybe we should add that in, Julie. And then everything from that to how to draw from the bag, and then some force-on-force considerations, which that is all still in development. But our goal is to provide just everything that is currently missing. And I couldn't think of a better team. Wow.
Really excited to work on it with you guys.
Yeah, wonderful.
This is one of those cases where owning your own glue gun is one of the best investments you can possibly make in your training.
Yes.
Because there are zero penalties for finding failure points with a glue gun.
Absolutely. That's how I tested the Vertex fanny pack. I threw it on with the glue gun and asked my training partner to attack me. And boy, did she. Boy, did I get choked out by a fanny pack. That was interesting. All of those things are considerations we'll throw in there. But anyway.
And just imagine that ad, buy Vertex.
Exactly, right? That's exactly what it felt like. I didn't tell her to do anything but just like use her purple belt experience to choke me out. So that was real cool.
Purple belts are so shady.
They are. Are you?
I'm not a purple belt.
Okay, so I say no. You're a blue belt.
I'm a blue belt.
We're both blue belts.
Yeah,
you're an actual blue belt though. I've taken a hiatus.
We're both blue belts. There's a large wasteland that is blue belts.
Yes, absolutely, 100%.
And we're out there in the desert.
Yeah, I see the same trauma in your eyes. That switch that gets flipped when you become a blue belt.
Shout out to my training partner, John Duffy, the purple belt. Thanks for killing me.
Oh, hey, shout out to my purple belt training partner, Arlena Tran. Look at us. Yeah. How cool. Yeah, but thank you guys for listening to this episode. Thank you, Andrew, for allowing us to come.
It was great to have you here.
Oh my gosh. Yay. Yes. Getting a tour was so interesting, and I don't know. It's not something you would think of, like getting a tour of a major holster manufacturing company.
So I would say we're a minor holster manufacturing company.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So in the industry we're in, there's an interesting thing. There are basically three tiers. You have major holster companies that use your Safariland, Blade Tech, Blackhawk, Comptech, DeSantis, Galco, Phobos. But those are companies that are making hundreds of thousands or millions of units.
Oh, wow.
Just like huge volumes of things every year. The kinds of, and G-Code. The kinds of companies that are taking on major military contracts, huge stuff. We're not in that category.
Got it.
We have, 26 employees, and we are in an 11,000 square foot facility. We punch above our weight in terms of being very productive in the space that we're in. And then, so we're in the middle tier. And then there is a huge base of small holster shops of 1 to 10 people, because the barrier to entry in this industry is very, very low. You can make holsters with $100 worth of tools. And if you're good, if you're craftsman-y, you can actually make a really serviceable holster with not a lot of equipment. What you can't do typically is make the same holster, the same fit 1,000 times quickly with that low investment. But you can make an amazing holster. And so it's a really interesting industry because there are so many players. There are 800-pound gorillas. The big one is Safariland. Safariland is the 800-pound gorilla. And the pyramid gets very wide at the base. There are tons and tons of companies all playing around with new ideas and iterating and doing various degrees of either invention or just mindless copying. There's a lot of mindless copying. And it is exciting to me to have a great staff here on our team where we develop a lot of new products. We have literally dozens of products in development on any given day. We're constantly trying out new things. And that means we get the advantage of tasting new ideas. And you've seen plenty of things on our Instagram. We've had plenty of phone conversations about questions you've had about holster making. Nothing substitutes for actually being here and seeing it.
Absolutely.
The same way that theoretically, every discussion on Reddit can be super cool. And then you go to one Force on Force class and your world is completely changed by that one thing.
Yes.
So go train, carry safe.
I love it.
And I look forward to showing you guys the future iterations, because this is not the final form.
Awesome. Okay. Are you searching for a brand you can trust when it comes to shooting and gun care products? Look no further than Birchwood Casey. Since 1948, serious shooters, avid collectors, and professional gunsmiths have relied on Birchwood Casey. They've been in the game for over 70 years, providing us with products that have stood the test of time. From their legendary True Oil gunstock finish to the dependable Perma Blue, Birchwood Casey's commitment to quality is unmatched. Birchwood Casey has also revolutionized the way we train and improve our shooting skills with their innovative Shoot and See targets. These targets let you see your shots instantly, making it easier than ever to track your progress and become a better marksman. Head over to birchwoodcasey.com today and discover the products that have earned the trust of shooters worldwide. And use code SHESHIELD20 to save 20% on your order and to support the podcast. Again, that's SHESHIELD20, SHESHIELD 20 at checkout. Happy shooting.